Here's a phrase you've probably said or heard more times than you can count. We just need to push through. Or everyone needs to dig deeper. Or the dreaded and often made fun of,
The
everyone
dread.
needs to give 110% this quarter. It feels like leadership to the people saying it. It feels like the right thing to say when the team is stretched and you have really big goals that you're trying to motivate your team to achieve. But the research clearly tells us that the harder the team works, the more errors they make, especially when they're doing it for prolonged periods. And it's something that isn't talked about enough. Today, we're going to unpack why try harder is the most expensive culture a scaling operation can have, and we'll give you 3 practical moves to start dismantling it. Hi, I'm Penny Cook, a fractional COO and strategic operations consultant. I help product and consumer brands install, upgrade, and run scalable operations and operational systems that reflect the founder's unique vision and ambition.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wilson, a fractional COO and turnaround partner for SMB. I help scaling companies unlock growth with the tools and teams they already have by installing the structure and repeatable processes that turn ambition into execution. Let's get into it.
Get into it.
Get into it. So, before you can fix a try harder culture, you have to see it. And the truth is that most founders and CEOs can't. And why is that? It's because heroic effort gets often mistaken for commitment. That's what it looks like. It might turn up in the long hours that people work, the all nighter before an important deadline or an important product launch. There's often that, we all have one or many people in the organization who know kind of all the quirks and the inside of, each and every important customer account, where they have the long history with how the ERP works. Another great example. And these look like, people who are really dedicated and on one hand it is, of course, but what you're really seeing is it's a sign of a poorly designed system. So here's the test. I encourage anyone trying to identify this culture within their own organization to look at it like this. Pick any process in your business that currently is. Here's the test. Pick any process in your business that's working well, or, it doesn't have to be something that you think is broken. Now ask yourself, if the person running that process takes 2 weeks off without any warning, either a vacation, heaven forbid, a medical issue, or if they just weren't able to be in the business for 2 weeks straight, would that process break? And if the answer to that question is yes, you potentially have an issue. This is one of my favorite pressure tests to do in the business. And one thing to think about as you actually do that pressure test is it's a really great really great opportunity for the key people in your business to actually take real time off when they take that next vacation. Really enforce that, no contact with the business, take true time off. We should be doing that for our teams anyways, but we know that a lot of really dedicated people kind of stay in touch even when they're on vacation. Time to start enforcing that, because that actually lets you pressure test. Are your processes going to run when those key people aren't available?
Sarah, that so rings true. And I have seen that it really is 2 different working styles that you have on your team. And these are either people's natural working styles or the culture that you proliferate on your team. So you have firefighters and you have
Mhm.
system builders. And if your team is full of firefighters, they're going to look for those heroics. And very often, those firefighters are also the corporate arsonists who are setting those fires, because they look for those adrenaline moments to step in. They need things to be a crisis and they need to solve them. That doesn't help you scale your business. That doesn't help systematize things. You need to work around those. Encourage any of your firefighting team members to come be part of this system. Let's solve things. Let's not constantly put problems in the middle of the business. Let's put systems and solutions in the middle of the business, right?
That's so true. And if those listening kind of felt a little like who would do that on purpose? If you had that kind of feeling in the pit of your stomach, you probably can either
We
relate
all
that
know some,
we all know some, or that might even be you. But,
right?
you
If you
know,
don't know anybody, look in the mirror. That's right. It could be you.
exactly. And I think, it's hard to believe that people might do that on purpose, but you have to remember that humans find, find value in, they want to have meaning for the work they do. And sometimes that creating problems so they can solve it, even if they do it unconsciously, is the way that they help themselves feel important, even though the reality is they're important for the work they do, not for necessarily the fires they fight.
That's right. It's totally true. And the best thing you can do for your operation, the best way to know your operation is really humming is it's quiet, right? There aren't
Yes.
problems. You can see things that are coming ahead and you can problem solve ahead of time, or you can test creative solutions to avoid big problems coming. The quiet operation that looks like it's easy and simple, those are the most complex to put together, and those are the most mature kinds of organizations, which really takes us to our second tip today, which is reframe errors as system signals, not effort problems. So when there's a mistake, let's not make this part of our culture of like, oh, we just deal with mistakes. We recognize patterns. We don't have a default response of this is a people problem, but we have a default response of what in our system allowed this to happen and how do we get in front of that for the future. These are learning moments, and you want a team that's able to adapt to those moments. So the research is clear that the blaming people approach makes things worse in your organization across the board. It's not good culturally, it's not good for your work pace, and it's not good for your outcome or any of the metrics that you look at, especially when you're dealing with cost in an operations center. When you ask people to compensate for a broken system with extra vigilance, rather than having a culture that really looks at things systematically, you're asking their brains to do something that brains are not very good at. Sustained attention is finite. It's fine in an emergency, but when that emergency state becomes your base level, you're going to see real diminishing returns, and you're going to see a lack of creative problem solving, pattern recognition, and the ability to really build those systems around the realities of your business. Vigilance fatigue is real. The harder someone tries to catch errors through effort alone, the more cognitive load they're carrying, and the more errors will slip through. You really want to create the culture and the environment in your operations organization that rewards creative thinking, that rewards that team hive mind thinking, where we look at issues as system problems and we're able to continually build and improve the system around them.
And that's so right. And to build on that, Penny, when we think about, when we're building that sustainable operation, and the questions you ask when an error happens are really good ways to help everybody shift their thinking. For example, instead of, who dropped this, who messed up, who, like, instead of finger pointing, we really should be asking ourselves, what about the system or the process itself caused this issue to happen? And that
Yeah.
really lets you get to the root cause of the issue.
Yeah.
And because the majority of our issues within operations are really about process and not so much about the
That's
people.
right. I had one of these early in my career when I was an engineering and operations director back in the day. And we had an engineer who brought down part of our network because they put a bad config on a router
Um,
during a time. Well, there were no times that were going to be downtimes because of how many customers were affected on that router. And upper level management wanted me to fire that engineer.
ouch.
And I didn't think this was a people problem, and I didn't think firing that person was going to make our organization better. In fact, I wanted the person in the organization who has already made that error because I knew that person was smart enough and conscious enough to be able to figure out how to route around that for the future. And what we did was we were able to put a system in place that protected the engineers from having that problem ever again. And we were able to improve the process of deploying these new configs to routers. So we took something that was a pretty dicey situation, and instead of just knee jerk calling it a people problem and then turning around and then giving ourselves the same problem again by just hiring another engineer who hadn't had that experience, we looked at it systematically and we improved the system. And I will tell you that problem never recurred. In fact, we strengthened the system because we saw that.
That's a great example. And I love how, it's understandable. That first reaction that you described was, let's point the finger and where are the consequences? And you
Yeah, it's
really
a
took
culture
that
choice for
right
sure.
to the root cause. And that helps build on what is our third tip, is really designing your operations at the right pace. So this might be the kind of hardest one that people listening might push back on, but it really comes down to designing your operations around 80% effort, not 100, not 110. So when we think about our operations and the work that happens within our businesses, we need to map out people's roles and expect that they are going to operate at 80% of the way all the time. And I know out loud, saying that out loud, people are cringing and going, wow, that's pretty expensive. And why on earth would I do that? But it's sustainable pace is really should be the standard and not necessarily like a perk that comes around every once in a while.
Yeah, totally agreed, Sarah. This isn't to say that you're going to go to your team and say, "Hey, I need you guys to give 80% this week."
Exactly.
Right? That's not what you're saying, but you really are watching for the pace that work is happening at. You're allowing for people to have vacations or sick days, or somebody needs to leave early to go to their kid's piano recital or something like that. Those things happen. So you're allowing people to be fully present with a reasonable workload at a reasonable pace while they're there, and give them leeway for the rest of their lives. And I think about how good it feels when you have somebody on your team who goes on vacation and they unplug, and you've created a system where they're able to do that, and they come back and they are refreshed and happy. And that mood tends to radiate through your whole
Yes.
group, and your whole group gets a boost from that because they come back rested. They come back refreshed. They are ready to put their 100% in. They see things with new eyes, and the whole group benefits from it. And imagine having that kind of freshness wash over your group all of the time because everyone is relaxed. They're able to think critically, and they're able to do their best work with you.
Yes, not firefighting allows the team to relieve the space to think, the space to reflect, catching problems before they become really big problems. That is another benefit that's maybe not as easy to measure, but definitely will occur if you build your team capacity sustainably. And I really want to point out that designing the work your teams do at 80% will actually get what looks like 100 to 110% effort. So those people working on your team who are just so appreciative of working in that supportive culture that we just described, they're gonna go to bat for you. They are gonna work their hardest to do their best for the organization, and you're going to actually get that much more output out of those people beyond it just being the right thing to do as a leader. It's actually a really smart business decision to structure your organization like that.
Yeah, totally agree. We send us some feedback on that because I know people will have feelings about that. How do you really identify it? How do you manage to that? And how do you know that you're actually maximizing the benefit that you have from the incredible talent you have on your team while
Yeah.
making sure that you're not overloading them? So, where this try harder culture might feel like leadership, it's actually a tax on your operation, and it compounds every quarter that you let it run. The teams that scale cleanly are not the ones working the hardest. They're the ones who are able to work in systems that do the heavy lifting, and the people are able to do the critical thinking on top of those systems. Auditware heroics are holding your team together.
Yes.
Treat errors as system signals, not effort problems, and make sustainable pace a standard in your organization, not a stretch goal. If what we talked about today sounds familiar in your business, please reach out. If you have any feelings about how to manage a team to that right systems approach and pace, please reach out, send us a comment. We'd be happy to talk more about that. These are the kinds of team issues that Sarah and I work to correct and improve on a regular basis. You can find us on our website, Operating on Purpose, or on LinkedIn. We'd love to talk, we'd love to debate, and we'd love to help your organization. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to our podcast. And
Because great businesses don't just happen, they operate on purpose.
can we go back and do that last part again? Because I made that awkward.
Oh, okay. I thought you were pausing, so you're
No,
pausing, and
I
then I
made
was like,
the lead in totally awkward. So hold on, I'm going to go back and
"Do you want me to say it or you'll say it?" Like, I don't have to say it. I just said it because you were quiet.
I'll do the don't forget to hit subscribe, and then you come in with the tagline.
Okay.
I like
Because
that.
I wasn't sure if you paused because you wanted me to say it or you just paused, so I just said it.
I paused because I put too many words in there, and there wasn't like a natural because it was. I made it weird. So okay, hold on. And don't forget to hit subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen.
Because great businesses don't just happen; they operate on purpose.
That's right. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
See you next
Bye.
time.